Yesterday, all my troubles seemed so far away, and then I saw this film. So, Yesterday is out in cinemas now. It's a new film by Danny Boyle, uh, famed director, talented director who previously made films such as Trainspotting, 28 Days Later, or Slumdog. But what interested me most about this film before I saw it was not even the director involved, but more the premise of the movie. So, the story is of a struggling English musician called Jack who writes his own songs, performs them on the street corners, in bars, in pubs, but he is rather unsuccessful and nobody really cares about him, save for the group of his closest friends, who are his only fans. Most notably, one of them is named Ellie, and she has been a lifelong friend and fan of him, and she's his kind of manager. And after another unsuccessful gig, Jack decides that maybe it's time to stop trying to pursue this career because it clearly isn't working. And he decides to just get a grip and find a job. And as he makes this decision, the very same evening, he has this weird, bizarre accident where there's this sort of blackout, worldwide blackout, where all electricity and lights go out for a couple of seconds. And during this time, he has a crash. A bus crashes into his bike, destroys his guitar. He ends up in a hospital. Fortunately, nothing much happens to him, so he's able to walk out after a couple of days. He meets back up with his friends. They gift him a new guitar because his previous one was destroyed. And sort of as a thank you, he plays them a song, and he chooses Yesterday by the Beatles. And they are immediately like, when did you write this? What is this song? And he obviously thinks that they are pranking him because Yesterday is such a well known tune. But then it turns out that it's not actually a prank, and something weird happened during his accident where he sort of jumped to a different alternate version of our world where the Beatles never existed. He tries to Google the band, he tries to Google the individual members, but gets no hits whatsoever. Seems that nobody ever heard any of their songs. They never existed. So he begins to rack his memory and tries to write down all of the songs that he remembers. With some of them, he struggles with the lyrics. With other ones, he struggles with the chords. But eventually, he manages to get most of them out, and he decides to basically pass them as his own music. And he begins playing them. He gets immediately noticed by a recording studio, then by a manager, and his career takes off, which is kind of predictable. So my main problem with the film is how uneven it really is, and I think it comes down to the fact that it's trying to be three different things at once. So the first thing that the movie is trying to be is this main premise, the main plot of a world without the Beatles, and I think this part was done actually really well. It's a fun comedic look into the music industry and into how even when presented with songs that we now know are absolute classics and fantastic music, there are people who would still try to meddle with them and change them and adapt them to the modern market to make them a better product with disregard to the actual music. Then you have the internal conflict of Jack, of course, who on the one hand wants to bring the music of the Beatles to the world. He doesn't want it to be lost and unknown. On the other hand, he doesn't feel too good about passing it as his own. So he's kind of guilty about that. There's also a lot of solid humor in this part, particularly in the first half of the movie. I thought my favorite joke was probably in the first 15 minutes or so, where Jack is Googling the Beatles and the members, and then he tries searching for other bands to see if it's just an isolated case or what's going on. So he finds the Rolling Stones, he finds Childish Gambino, and then he tries Oasis, and he gets no hits as well. And I think I was the only person in the theater that laughed at this. I think that most people didn't get the joke that Oasis stole so much from the Beatles that they essentially wouldn't exist if there were no Beatles. So then the second thing that the movie is trying to be is a love letter to the Beatles as a band, and I think that this part is worse than the sort of musical comedy. I think that some of the scenes where we're paying tribute to Beatles music work quite well, but a lot of them are too on the nose. Particularly, there's one scene towards the end where I won't reveal what happens because that would be a spoiler. But as it happens, you're just like, really? Did you have to go there? Isn't it too much? And also, surprisingly, there's very little actual Beatles music used throughout the film. And I don't mean just their songs one to one, but even Jack's versions, Jack's covers of those songs. We actually only get to hear a couple of them, and not even full songs, but just fragments of them. Um, which is weird because it's not like the runtime wouldn't allow it, because there's another musician in the film included, and it's Ed Sheeran. And I knew he was gonna be in the film because he's in the trailer, but the trailer made it out to be more of a cameo and a small role. And then so he shows up on the screen, and you're like, okay, this is actually quite funny. It works because it moves the plot forwards. It makes sense for him to be there. And he's actually quite a cool presence on the screen because he well, the humor with his scenes in his scenes is quite self-aware and self-depreciating, so it's a nice inclusion. And you're thinking that this is a fun cameo. It was nice to see him, and then he keeps showing up again and again and again and again, and you're thinking, okay, so he's just gonna be a regular side character to this film. And then he keeps showing up again and again and again, and his music is featured in the film, and the climax takes place on an Ed Sheeran concert with his music playing. So you're like, what are you? Just get off the screen, man. It's not your film. I mean, I didn't go to a Beatles love letter film to see this ginger muppet. Just get the fuck out, man. So this kind of ruined the musical feel to me. And then the final thing that the movie is trying to do is this love story between Jack and Ellie. And I think this fails spectacularly, mostly because Ellie is a fucking shit character. I will spoil a lot of this plot because it's so stupid that I think I'm just gonna save you the time needed to see it for yourself. So when we meet them, they are in this friendship, friend zone relationship. And then, as Jack's career is beginning to take off, Ellie decides that this is a perfect moment to reveal that she's been in love with him for 10 years. So, as an audience, we immediately ask ourselves and her, well, why the fuck didn't you say so? But the movie doesn't try to ask that question, doesn't try to answer that question, and instead of being reasonable about it, it's trying to make us feel bad for Ellie and sympathize with her, which is a very difficult thing to do because she dumps all of this on Jack. Then immediately she basically forces him to choose between his rejuvenated career and her. And then when he chooses to go for the career, she immediately hooks up with someone else while still calling Jack and telling him, I still have feelings for you. And then when he finally admits that he's got feelings for her as well and comes crawling back, she immediately dumps the poor guy. So it's like I was watching this and thinking like, fuck off, Ellie. You're just a horrible human being. You don't deserve this. And again, I'm fine with awful characters in movies, but it should be made clear that the movie knows that they're awful. And instead here, it's passed off as Ellie is this kind of quirky romantic character that we're supposed to root for her. No way, no way. I think it is a good test though, good relationship test. I think if you go see this film with your significant other, with your girlfriend or boyfriend, if she or he actually roots for Ellie and agrees with her point of view, run away because no, that's not a good person. So, to kind of wrap this all up, ultimately, I don't think this is a good movie. It looked like it might be after the first half, but the longer it goes on, the worse it becomes. And towards the end, I was just rolling my eyes, waiting for the end to come. It is unfortunately more infuriating than entertaining, and that's just not something that I can forgive it. It's not something that I can let it be.